Hello humans! Big shock, Moana 2 sucks. So yeah, as you could tell from my previous video about my thoughts on the teaser, I wasn't looking forward to this movie, and that never changed. So why did I bother to see it? Because I'm a struggling YouTuber trying to appeal to the algorithm so my channel can take off. Yeah, it's a shallow reason, but that's just the way being a YouTuber works when you haven't made it yet. However, Moana 2 is much more shallow, since it's just a cash grab that didn't have much effort put into it, to the point where it feels like one of those bad Disney sequels that was originally meant to be a TV series, but then turned into a movie. What's the difference? Well, this one had more of a budget. However, before I get into my thoughts on this movie, I should at least briefly go over what I thought about the original movie. I think it's a good, but not great movie. A majority of the jokes don't work, Hey adds nothing, Maui is a terrible character, I don't like the lack of a true villain, Tamatoa is lame and I hate his song, and Moana, while likable, shouldn't be adorable. Plus, I am bitter that it was originally meant to be a 2D film, but they didn't let it happen. If you want more details on that, check out Isaac Carlson's video on the subject, which I'll link in the description for you so you can watch it after this video, of course. But it also has gorgeous animation, a great story, even if it's ruined by Maui and the jokes, awesome designs, Grandma Tala is mermazing, a pretty good soundtrack minus You're Welcome and Shiny, beautifully shows the Polynesian culture, and the first third is genuinely phenomenal, despite a few hiccups. It's overall a good time, but it's not great due to its major flaws. But I will definitely take it over the sequel. Now, before I go in deeper, keep in mind that this is just my opinion. If you disagree, that's fine, just don't be about it. Now, without any further delay, let's dive right on in. So the story is basically that Moana gets a call from her wayfinding ancestors to sail across the sea to restore an island that is being guarded by an evil god of lightning named Nalo. Sound familiar? Yes, this is going to be one of those sequels that's basically telling the same story but does it much worse. And the conflict feels so forced that we don't really get a sense of why this is so important. Yeah, the people are separated from each other because of an island that is underwater, but why can't they just go around the lame thundercloud monster? There's plenty of space to go around. It's the ocean. It's not really explained very well, and this is coming from someone who will use his suspension of disbelief for films, and doesn't really need every little detail spelled out, but they need to address important ones like this. Yeah, you can tell that this was meant to be a TV series because they really don't hide how terrible the pacing in this film is. There are jump cuts in a lot of scenes that don't make the transitions feel like they're naturally integrated into the film. I know you're probably wondering what the editing has to do with the writing. Well, both are important parts of the story. The editing affects the visual storytelling, and its jump cuts really lessens the impact of moments, like when Moana is reunited with Tala again, and it's much less personal. When she came back, they knew how to take it slow to make it more meaningful. This has none of that. It just makes cuts and feels like the film has ADHD, and I say that as someone who has ADHD. It just made the film a lot less pleasant. Because the writing is so rushed, forced, and cluttered, there's no time to build a connection between Moana and her crew members, which is a big problem when we're supposed to connect with them. Her connection with them feels more like a bunch of strangers locked in a room together. There's no development in the relationships between these characters to make it work. It's not like it can't be done while telling a complex and tight-knit story. Just look at one of my favorite films, Rise of the Guardians. It establishes the characters' personalities and their relationships with each other flawlessly while telling a great story seamlessly. Raya and the Last Dragon, one of the most underrated Disney films, also did this very well. This does not. Okay, spoiler alert. Skip to this time if you want to avoid it. You've been warned. They have a scene where Moana dies, and I just kept on wanting to yell, knock it off, we know that you don't have the guts to really kill her off, get on with it. And it turns out Moana is now a demigoddess, and Maui's demigod powers and tattoos are restored, since Nalu apparently had the ability to take Maui's powers away prior to this. How? Is that something only he can do? Can any god do this? If so, why didn't Te Fiti do this after her harp was stolen by Maui and turned into Taka? Anyway, I don't know how I feel about Moana becoming a demigoddess. I guess she gets cool powers, but it also makes her feel like a Mary Sue that dies, gets magically brought back to life, and gets powers. First of all, how does that even work? It wasn't even the gods that brought her back, it was her ancestors, which doesn't make sense because they don't have magic apart from turning into glowing sea creatures and appearing as ghosts. secondly, this is horrible because it means Moana is gonna live forever, or at least for thousands of years, and will watch her little sister grow old and die. Actually, now that I think about it, I hate this, so I'm gonna move on. As many of you know, I'm not a big fan of the current style of humor in Disney movies nowadays, especially since I made a whole video about it, which I'll also link down below. So I'm willing to bet you're curious about what I think about the humor in this film. Well, predictably, I hate it. In fact, this makes the weak humor in the original look like Aladdin by comparison. It's forced, unfunny, ruins serious moments, and makes the film even more of a mess than it already is. Moana is still adorable, Hey is still useless and stupid, Maui is still annoying and tells jokes that don't fit with the setting, the new characters have dumb gags about them, they make pop culture references like butt dialing and fan fiction, and I just wish Disney would stop doing this pandering humor that's supposed to make kids laugh because it's not gonna hold up when the kids grow up. The only humor I found funny was when it came to Minnie Maui and Matangi. In the case of Matangi, her humor has a dark twist to it, and the way she moved was a lot of fun. Minnie Maui is just a lot of fun in general, and usually shows my frustration, but everything else sucks. They even brought back Tamatoa in the mid-credits scene, and he's still annoying. That brings me to another issue. The sequel keeps on making references to its predecessor, saying titles of songs, Maui saying boat snack, Moana still claiming not to be a princess despite being an official Disney princess, that one dancing kid who makes the flirty kissy face to Moana, and I could go on forever with all these references. One thing I hate is when sequels are constantly referencing the original because it feels like blatant nostalgia bait because they know the film isn't strong enough to hold its own. And that's what this film is. It's not strong enough to be its own thing and therefore has to rely on the original movie. Disney, take notes from The Rescuers Down Under on how to be a great Disney sequel while also standing on your own and actually being superior to the original. And I'm just gonna quickly plug one of my favorite YouTubers, Rockatar, and his amazing video about why The Rescuers Down Under is so great. So go check that out after this video. It's much more entertaining than Moana 2. I can honestly say that I didn't care about the journey these characters went on, and that's also because I wasn't really invested in these characters. Granted, the characters weren't that strong in the original apart from Tala, the ocean, Minnie Maui, and even Moana when she wasn't around Maui or being adorkable, but the characters are much worse here. Starting with Moana herself, if you saw my thoughts on the teaser, you knew I was hoping that with 3 years passing that she would mature and not be adorkable, but she really was just more of the same. This is a problem because there's no sense of growth from her in this film, and it feels like she's learning the same lessons she already learned, but worse. Moana was a character I felt was at her strongest in the original during the moments where she wasn't being adorkable or being around Maui, who I felt brought out the worst in her by playing up weak humor. So I honestly think that she needed to lose her adorkable traits, especially since she's around a bunch of quirky characters and she's meant to be the leader and the voice of reason, but that falls flat with her making jokes and acting silly. It also doesn't give much balance with the character dynamics. It feels like she's a quirky girl competing with other characters who are just a lot quirkier than her. It's still Moana, but a lesser version with no real development. Maui is a bit better than he was in the original movie because he's not being an unlikable but he's still telling a bunch of terrible jokes with pop culture references and modern jokes that don't fit with the film's setting. Not to mention the many times he causes the tonal inconsistencies because he's making jokes during serious moments. Whatever happened to characters actually taking moments seriously and not making unnecessary jokes with dumb gags? It feels like The Rock was playing himself and no one thought to make him stop. Even Sisu was never this bad, and Maui makes her look catatonic in comparison. Hey is still pointless and didn't even get a laugh out of me. At least in the original, there was a few times he got a laugh out of me. Not much, but I laughed 2 or 3 times in the original, but I didn't laugh at all here. Ua is just there. Also, the Kakamora are good now, despite that they wanted to steal the heart of Te Fiti and kill Moana and Maui in the original. Yeah, there's an explanation with them being separated from their home and needing Moana's help, but it feels out of nowhere. As for the new characters, they are all just pointless and unmemorable, and at times even annoying. There's Mani, the spaz that is obsessed with Maui, Kile, a grumpy old man that hates everything, and Lato, who likes to build things but also tears them apart to make them better, even when they're right in the middle of the ocean and she could kill them! Not to mention that all three of them are pretty useless. Moana's little sister Simea was absolutely pointless like I predicted she would be. She's just there to be cutesy and that's it. There are some cute moments from her, but she borders on being cloying at times. Her relationship with Moana is sweet, but there's no real reason for her to exist other than to sell toys. The quote-unquote villain, Nalo, is boring and doesn't even have a cool design with his thundercloud form. He doesn't interact with any of the heroes, and that makes for a bad villain. He's lame and has no charisma or presence to the point where he makes Magnifico look like Jafar. The only character that I actively enjoyed was Matangi, who was stylish, energized, slick, moved in such a fun and interesting way, had a great design, and was actually intimidating. I love how they actually kept her in shadows throughout the film until she met Moana. She had the makings of a truly great villain, and I was actually excited while watching her. However, a major issue with her is that she wasn't actually a villain, despite being promoted as such. Despite working for Nalo, though unwillingly, she actually helped Moana and was only holding Maui captive so she could make sure that he and Moana went on the mission together. Thanks, I hate it. But honestly, she was still an entertaining and fun character. I just wish she had been the main antagonist and an actual villain. She felt like a return to the great Disney villains. But I guess we just can't have nice things. So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a big fan of Lin-Manuel Miranda's work. His style is way too contemporary, I often need subtitles to listen to his songs, and I do think he's partially to blame for the popification of Disney, which is why even movies where he isn't involved have a pop soundtrack feel to them. If you want to know more about the popification of Disney, I would highly recommend Aster Rhymemaster's video on the subject, who has also made videos about the songs Beyond and Can I Get a Chi-Hu, which I also recommend, and I'll leave links to all of these videos in the description. But I will say that I do like the songs in the original Moana, even if the only song that he wrote in the movie that I love is I Am Moana. But I will say I love the songs that showcase the Samoan language. But then again, I am a sucker for songs that showcase different languages. However, the same can't be said for these songs because they feel more similar to Wish than they do Moana with how blatant they are with their contemporary pop style. They feel like they're trying to impersonate the songs from the original movie, like How Far I'll Go with Beyond, Where You Are with We're Back, and You're Welcome with Can I Get a Chi-Hu. This shows how little thought actually went into these songs, especially since they feel more like songs made for TikTok, which makes sense when you get TikTok songwriters. We're Back is unmemorable and feels like it's trying to cram too much into the song, not to mention trying to emulate Lin-Manuel Miranda's style of fast talking that sounds like rap, which is a style I'm personally not a fan of. Beyond is also just bland and unmemorable with some awkward lyrics. How Far I'll Go had some awkward wording as well, but it flowed much better than this, and was definitely memorable, especially in comparison. What could be better than this is absolutely annoying, and felt like the lyricists needed to be cut off from caffeine. It literally made me want these characters to drown. Get Lost is definitely blamed with its pop influence, but at the same time it's kind of fun. But I think that's mostly because of Matangi, though I would have preferred more of a Poor Unfortunate Souls vibe. Can I Get a Chi-Hu is the worst song in the movie. It has some cool visuals, but takes the flaws of You're Welcome and amplifies them. The songs that incorporate the Samoan language are the highlights, since they aren't blatant pop songs in a Disney animated musical, and they just sound good. Why couldn't the other songs have incorporated the culture in it, similar to what was done in The Lion King instead of just pop songs? You know the music is bad if it makes me miss Lin-Manuel Miranda. So I guess we can expect a third Moana movie, and not just because this movie has already made a lot of money, but apparently we get a mid-credits scene that shows Nalu in his regular god form, showing he knows that Matangi held Moana and Maui, is still keeping her imprisoned, and says that it's not over. So now we have a sequel hook. This is another example of how you can clearly tell that this was meant to be a TV series. This feels like a hook for a second season, but by doing this, it feels like they're doing the Marvel thing, where they have to do a sequel hook hook for an upcoming movie. And because this is a sequel to a movie a lot of people love, it's going to make money. However, I do not plan on seeing the third movie at all. I don't care if my channel is still struggling by then, because I'm not suffering through that again. So if you can tell, this isn't a very good movie in my opinion. It's definitely one of the weakest films released from the revival era, which isn't saying much considering how I find half of them to be underwhelming at best. If you have kids, they'll probably enjoy it, but when I went to see it, there were some kids that were loud and obnoxious in the theater, and I didn't hear many of them laugh any louder than a chuckle. So I feel like it's gonna be something that they'll watch a few times, but will watch the original a lot more. The humor is terrible, the pacing is awful, the characters are annoying at worst and forgettable at best, the songs aren't giving, and it overall feels like a direct-to-video sequel from a scrap TV series just with a theatrical budget. Yes, the animation is gorgeous, it has a great score, and Matangi is entertaining even if it's disappointing that she's not a villain. But I say don't waste your time and hard-earned money on it. And definitely don't waste your time with the Moana remake, which I have no intention of seeing, so you won't be seeing a review of that on this channel. This film had potential to be a great series like Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, but as a film, this is just awful. And those were my thoughts on Moana 2. So what did you guys think? Did you agree with any of my opinions? What are your opinions on Moana 2? Let me know in the comments. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to help my channel take off, which I would really appreciate. You can also check out my other social media accounts in the links below. I'm the Wicked Merman from Under the See ya!